Her heel was still on the windowsill when I walked in. That was the first thing I noticed, a single black stiletto, dangling off her foot like it had slipped in the middle of a lie. The room smelled like wine, sweat, and something expensive I never wore. She didn't hear me at first. She was laughing. Giggling, actually. The kind of sound she hadn't made in months. Maybe years. I stood there, frozen in the doorway of the hotel room she swore was for corporate stays only. Room 308. Red patterned carpet. A half-empty bottle of Pinot Noir on the desk. And my shirt. My shirt. He was wearing it. That bastard. Tall. Tan. Confident in a way I forgot existed. Shirt wrinkled, unbuttoned. My shirt. The one she never let me wear to family events because it hugged my belly in all the wrong places. Funny how it fit him just fine. She saw me. Finally. The laughter stopped mid-breath. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She clutched the bedsheet tighter around her, like that would somehow preserve modesty. Like shame could be stitched together with hotel linen. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't ask questions. I just walked in, dropped the manila envelope on the nightstand between the two champagne glasses, and looked at her the way a man looks at a fire that used to be his house. Sign them, I said. Her mouth moved, but her voice broke before it made it past her throat. He stood up, still in my shirt, and had the audacity to smirk. I didn't flinch. I just turned and left. I never looked back to see if she cried, because the moment she let another man wear my shame like a souvenir, she lost the right to my forgiveness. In part 2, I'll tell you how I knew to find her there, and what sick game she'd been playing behind my back for almost a year. You think this was the worst of it? Oh no, this was foreplay. The real betrayal started with a voicemail. From her mother. I didn't sleep the night after I left that hotel room. I didn't cry either. People expect tears, don't they? As if pain needs to leak out of your eyes to be considered real. But mine just pooled in the spaces behind my ribs and sat there, heavy and quiet. I sat in the dark kitchen, chewing on the silence, wondering how many times I'd been lied to by the same voice that used to beg me to never hurt her. At around 3:11 a.m., my phone buzzed. One voicemail. From Loretta, her mother. Felicity's mom never called me. Never liked me. She always said I lacked ambition, and once told Felicity at Christmas, right in front of me, that he's sweet, but not enough man for a woman like you. I laughed at the time. Laughed and poured her another glass of wine like some obedient idiot. But this voicemail? This one was different. I put it on speaker and hit play. Dorian. Honey. Listen, I know I'm not supposed to say anything, and she'll probably be furious, but I can't sleep. I saw her tonight. At the hotel. And she wasn't alone. And I know what she told you, but it's not the truth. She's not working late, Dorian. She hasn't been for a long time. There was a pause, shaky breathing. She parked in the back. Room 308. I saw her get out with a man. A tall one. I don't know who he is, but it's not right. You don't deserve this. I know I've said some things, but you've always been good to her. Too good. Just don't tell her I called. The message ended. My blood didn't boil. It froze. Everything around me seemed to fall into a perfect stillness, like the world had been tilted for years and had suddenly snapped back into place, brutally, violently straight. I checked the timestamp. Loretta had called me 30 minutes before I walked into that room, which meant she knew. She'd known before, maybe for weeks, maybe months. And suddenly, all the family dinners where Loretta avoided my eyes, all the times she said, "You two should really take a break," all the "she's just stressed" lines, they weren't motherly advice. They were guilt. That voicemail was my final confirmation. My threadbare marriage hadn't just torn apart that night. It had unraveled long ago. I just hadn't looked down to see I was already naked. I didn't go back to bed. Instead, I grabbed the spare key she forgot she gave me last year when her purse broke. I got in my truck, drove across town in the rain, and let myself into his apartment. Yeah, I knew who he was. I had pictures. I had timelines. I had hotel receipts that didn't match any business trips. I had 3 months of watching the patterns. I had his name. And I had a plan. The apartment was cleaner than I expected. That somehow made it worse. The guy who helped destroy my marriage had a countertop that sparkled, throw pillows perfectly fluffed, and a scent diffuser humming peppermint into the air. The place looked like it belonged to a dating app profile. Effortless charm, curated imperfection, cozy lighting. Everything she used to complain my place didn't have. I stood in the doorway for a moment, not sure if I was about to throw up or pass out. I told myself I just wanted to see it, to step inside and know the truth for myself. But when the door shut behind me with a soft click, I realized I hadn't come for answers. I'd come for confirmation. There's a difference. You already know the truth when you're betrayed. You feel it in the pauses, the excuses, the fake yawns at 6 p.m. when she's too tired to talk. I didn't need proof anymore. I needed to look the betrayal in the eye. I didn't even have to snoop. It was all right there. A framed photo of him and Felicity on the side table, laughing. Her hand on his chest, his arm wrapped around her waist like he owned her. Like she belonged to him. Like she hadn't spent the last 5 years curled up next to me on the couch, claiming she hated PDA. I stared at that photo longer than I should have, until my vision started to blur, not from tears, but from this hot, buzzing anger that had nowhere to go. I walked through the apartment slowly, taking in the details. His bookshelf had 2 books about investing and 6 about whiskey. There was a charging station with 2 phones, 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom, a yoga mat. She used to tell me yoga bored her. I noticed the robe hanging behind the bathroom door, dark green, embroidered with his initials. The same one she had described once as so soft, it makes hotel robes feel like sandpaper. She talked about him to me. She slipped him into conversations like he was just some funny guy at work, always saying things like, "Oh, you'd hate him. Dorian, he's such an arrogant show-off." And stupid me. I thought that meant she didn't like him. I thought she was venting. I didn't know she was rehearsing a defense for later. But the worst part, the part that made my knees buckle, was the folder on his kitchen counter. Open. Careless. A printed copy of our fertility clinic intake forms. My name on the first page. Her signature on the second. Notes scribbled in red pen beside the line that said, "Potential sperm donor required." Circled. Underlined. With the word him written next to it. I stood there for God knows how long. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 30. I just kept reading that word him. Over and over until it felt like it had been carved into my chest. So that was the plan, huh? Use me for the paperwork, the insurance, the calm reliability, and then quietly switch out the DNA behind my back. Let me raise someone else's kid thinking it was mine. I guess I really was sweet but not enough man, like her mom once said. I didn't trash the place. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I just left, quietly, like the ghost of a man walking out of his own grave. When I got back home, I opened the hall closet, pulled out the box I never thought I'd need, the one labeled just in case, and started packing her things. Every perfume bottle, every silk scarf, every stupid book about finding your inner power. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but one thing was finally, perfectly clear. Felicity wasn't coming back into this house again. Not as my wife. Not as anything. I didn't call Felicity. I didn't text her. I didn't block her either. Not yet. Let her sit in that silent purgatory for a while. Let her wonder how much I knew and whether the cold vacuum of my absence meant I was broken or just done. Spoiler, it was both. Instead, I called Lena, her younger sister. The one person in Felicity's orbit who had ever treated me like I was more than her sister's temporary sidekick. Lena had always been different. Honest to the point of being abrasive, brutally sarcastic, never bought into the corporate plastic perfect facade that Felicity wrapped herself in like armor. Years ago, after one too many family dinners, she pulled me aside and whispered, "You're too soft for her. She's going to chew through your kindness like it's gum." I laughed at the time, thought she was being dramatic. But now I knew better. I asked her to meet me at the coffee shop downtown, the one with the crooked tables and the tiny teacups that Felicity used to call pretentious. Lena showed up in an old hoodie and yoga pants, hair in a messy bun, no filter on her face or her mouth. She took one look at me and knew something was wrong. She didn't say hello, just sat down and said, "All right, which organ are we donating, and why do you look like you haven't blinked in a week?" I slid the folder across the table. The same folder I found on his counter, with the fertility papers, the receipts, the photos I printed out from the GPS tracker data. I laid it all out, page by page. Hotel visits, timestamps, a copy of the voicemail her mother left me. And then, at the very bottom, the photo of him wearing my shirt, the same night I caught them together. Lena didn't speak for a long time. She flipped through each page slowly, the lines around her mouth tightening more with every turn. At one point she muttered something under her breath, but I couldn't hear it. Finally, she pushed the papers away and just stared at me like I had turned into someone else. She said she was going to therapy, Lena whispered, voice flat. She told me you guys were working on things. She told me you were the one drifting. She looked up at me, her eyes suddenly wide. You never cheated, did you? I shook my head. Didn't even think about it. She leaned back in her chair like the wind had been knocked out of her. Holy hell. She actually went through with it. I always knew she had it in her, but not like this. Not this calculated. That word stuck with me. Calculated. It echoed in my skull the entire time we sat there in silence. Because she was right. This wasn't some heat-of-the-moment affair. This was months of planning. Coordinated lies. 2 toothbrushes. Fertility forms. Candlelight dinners in places I never knew existed. A second relationship built on top of the corpse of ours. I'm telling you this, I said, finally, because you're her sister. And because someone in her life should still be capable of shame. Lena wiped her eyes once. Just once. Then she pulled out her phone, scrolled to a contact, and without hesitating, she hit call. I didn't ask what she planned to do. I didn't have to. She looked me dead in the eye and said, she's not going to get away with this. Not with me. Not with our parents. Not with anyone. And that's when the plan started to form. Not revenge. Not rage. Exposure. Because I realized something sitting in that cafe. Felicity didn't just cheat on me. She rewrote our whole story in her head, sold it to everyone in her life, and wore the costume of a victim while playing me like a damn piano. And I was done being background music. It didn't take Lena long to burn the match. I had barely pulled out of the parking lot when she texted me a single word. Called. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Whatever was going to happen next, I knew it wouldn't be quiet. Felicity was a master at crafting appearances, but her biggest flaw, the one I'd overlooked for years, was that she never expected her lies to have a shelf life. She thought they could live forever, as long as she kept decorating them with excuses. Turns out, 11 minutes is all it took for everything to fall apart. According to Lena, the phone call started like every other one. Felicity answered like she'd just stepped off a yoga mat, calm and composed, probably sipping one of those overpriced ginger teas she swore helped with energy alignment. But Lena didn't waste time. She went in hard, fast, and surgically, listing names, dates, hotels, and ending with the question that pierced like a bullet. Why was Dorian's shirt on your boyfriend? The silence on the other end could have swallowed the universe. Felicity stammered, apparently, denied, then pivoted, blamed stress, work, the strain of carrying the relationship. The same script she always used when cornered, like she thought everyone else still played by the same old rules. But Lena didn't let up. She told her about the papers, the photos, the voicemail. She said, you didn't just cheat on your husband, Fel. You ran a goddamn operation. You should have hired a project manager for this affair. Felicity finally cracked. She didn't apologize. No, that would have required humility. Instead, she snapped, accused me of manipulating Lena, said I was setting her up, claimed I had probably edited the documents. And when Lena told her she had physically seen the hotel parking footage herself, because she'd driven past the same night her mom called me, Felicity hung up. No explanation. No redemption arc. Just rage. But here's the thing about people who build their lives on performance. When the script fails, they don't rewrite it. They throw a tantrum. And that tantrum came flying in less than 2 hours later when I got served. Yeah, served. She filed for a restraining order. The grounds? Emotional manipulation and obsessive surveillance. She said I stalked her location, invaded her privacy, and intimidated her sister into turning against her. I laughed when I read it. Laughed so hard I nearly choked. The woman who spent a year sneaking into motel rooms under my name now wanted the court to believe she was scared of me. The man who folded her laundry and baked her gluten-free brownies during her fake business trips. It was desperation. Pure, flailing panic. But she didn't know one thing. The documents she submitted included timestamps that aligned exactly with the GPS logs I had. She essentially verified every movement I had already suspected. She proved it herself. It was like watching a magician accidentally saw herself in half on stage. She tried to bury me, and in doing so, handed me the entire shovel and map. And yet, despite everything, the betrayal, the lies, the legal stunt, the part that crushed me wasn't the paperwork. It wasn't even her reaction. It was the message I got that same evening, completely out of nowhere. A text from an unknown number. It read, "She told me you were abusive. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I'll leave her alone." No name. No context. But I knew exactly who sent it. Him. The man in my shirt. The text didn't surprise me as much as it should have. I just stared at it, letting the silence of my apartment fill in the spaces between those hollow words. "She told me you were abusive. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I'll leave her alone." That sentence hit me like a brick wrapped in velvet. Not because I hadn't expected her to lie, but because of the way she chose to rewrite history so neatly in her favor. I had always feared she'd twist the truth someday, but I didn't think she'd weaponize my silence. I didn't respond right away. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what exactly he knew and what he thought he knew. So I called him. He picked up on the second ring. I didn't expect that either. "Hello." His voice sounded like it belonged to a man used to getting his way. Confident, collected, but now there was hesitation in it. Maybe guilt. Maybe fear. Or maybe just the dread of a man who realized he'd been playing a role in someone else's script and just got handed the wrong lines. "Is this Devin?" I asked. My voice was calm. Too calm. There was a pause. "Yeah. This is Dorian." He didn't speak. Not at first. You could hear the tension bleed through the phone like static. "Listen, man, I didn't know. She told you I hit her?" "Yeah. She said you were controlling. That you isolated her from her friends, tracked her phone, checked her email. She said you threatened to kill her dog once if she left." That last one made my stomach turn so hard I had to grab the counter to stay upright. "Biscuit. She brought Biscuit into this? She told you all that?" I said slowly. "While wearing my clothes and sleeping in your bed?" He didn't answer. "Did you ever ask her for proof?" "No, I didn't think." "Of course you didn't. Because it felt better not to." More silence. You could tell he wanted to justify himself. Say he was lied to. Say he was just a pawn. But part of him knew the truth. Knew the math didn't add up. Knew that no woman afraid for her life moves out of a shared home by taking matching vacation photos with her affair partner. "I didn't reach out to fight," I said. "I just want one thing." "What?" "The truth. The real one. How long? How did it start?" He exhaled hard. 16 months. We met at a conference in Austin. She told me you two were separated. Said the paperwork was taking forever. She even showed me a fake message from her lawyer. My jaw clenched. I didn't even know where to file that information in my head. A fake lawyer? She manufactured evidence to justify an affair? She said you were emotionally unstable. That you cried in your sleep. That you threatened to fake a suicide attempt if she ever left. I let out a bitter laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurdly theatrical I half expected him to tell me she'd said I lived in a basement and wrote manifestos in crayon. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. Because after Lena called her out, she spiraled. She started saying I was manipulating her, accusing me of leaking her secrets. She screamed at me last night, told me I was trying to ruin her life. "Man, she said the same things about me she said about you. Word for word." There it was. The moment the mask slipped for him, too. "She never loved either of us," I said flatly. "No," he agreed. "I don't think she even loves herself." The call ended without drama. No threats. No resolution. Just the sad, bitter end to a play where both of us had been cast as the fool. But the real twist didn't come until the next morning, when I opened my email to find a single message from her corporate address. The subject line, "This is going to cost you everything." Inside the email, an audio file. A recording. She'd saved it. Of us. A private moment. Something she must have taped without me knowing. Her voice in the file was soft. Mine was broken. It was from the night my father died last year, when I sobbed into her lap and told her I didn't know how to live without him. She was going to use it against me. That's when I realized this had never been about love, or even betrayal. It was always about control. And if she thought that would silence me, she hadn't met the version of me she just created. I played the audio 3 times before I realized what she had done. Not just what she'd recorded. That much was obvious. But why she sent it. She wasn't threatening me with blackmail, not directly. She didn't have to. The message was unspoken. "If you keep going, I will ruin what little dignity you have left." And she thought this would do it. She thought hearing my own broken voice, trembling and raw, would shame me into silence. But all it did was ignite something I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. I didn't even cry this time. I just sat there, listening to the sound of myself grieving in front of the one person I thought would always hold me together. Her voice in the background, soft and smooth, pretending to comfort me while secretly documenting my collapse. I imagined her slipping her phone under a pillow, screen down, the record button glowing. I imagined her looking down at me while I fell apart, already calculating how she'd use it someday if I ever stepped out of line. What kind of person plans that? And more importantly, who else had she done this to? That was the question that changed everything. I didn't have access to her accounts, but I knew someone who did, at least partially. Lena. After everything that had unfolded, she'd taken it upon herself to clean up her sister's mess in ways I never expected. She still had Felicity's old shared calendar linked to her own for carpooling reasons, back from when they were managing their mother's medical appointments. It hadn't been unlinked. That's how Lena noticed something strange a few days earlier. There was an event marked private, archive session, client 03/remote A/V, scheduled weekly at the same time Felicity claimed to be in therapy. The location was always off-site. When Lena confronted her about it last week during their blow-up, Felicity claimed it was just coaching work for a startup she was helping on the side. Lena didn't believe her. Not after the hotel photos. Not after the voicemail. Not after the shirt. So when I told Lena about the audio she sent me and what was on it, Lena went quiet for about 30 seconds. And then she said something that still sends chills down my spine. She used to record my mom. I didn't even know how to respond to that. Apparently, during their mother's early dementia diagnosis, Felicity had offered to manage all the doctor visits, insurance calls, and prescriptions. But instead of just organizing things, she'd begun secretly taping conversations, including ones with Lena, under the guise of medical documentation. Except those files never made it to doctors or insurance. They were saved, cataloged, labeled. Lena only found out when she borrowed Felicity's laptop one Thanksgiving to play a slideshow and stumbled onto a folder called Echo. She thought it was just a playlist. It wasn't. It was a digital vault. Recordings of arguments, therapy sessions, phone calls, even video clips, silent, zoomed-in shots taken from inside her car, aimed at people she never mentioned. Co-workers, neighbors, family, me, all filed under innocuous names. Lena never confronted her. She just buried it, like we all do when the truth feels too poisonous to hold in your hands. But now we had a reason. Lena asked if she could forward the audio Felicity sent me to someone at her workplace, a man named Murray Halper, head of ethics and compliance. I didn't know what her job's internal policies were, but from the way Lena said his name, I could tell this wasn't just a bluff. 2 days later, Felicity's world began to fracture. She was suspended from her position, pending internal review regarding potential privacy violations and misconduct involving non-consensual recordings of personnel. The company hadn't even heard the full story yet. Just the file she sent me was enough to raise red flags. Apparently, she'd been doing off-record coaching with lower-level staff, unofficially, under the radar. Some of those conversations were emotionally vulnerable, and she'd recorded them, without telling anyone, and kept them. Her email accounts had copies. Her cloud storage had dates going back over a year. One HR associate described it as a terrifying pattern of digital voyeurism masked as mentorship. Suddenly, I wasn't just a cheated husband. I was a key witness. Her ex-lover was irrelevant now. The drama between us? A footnote. This was something deeper, more sinister, something that blurred the line between narcissism and pathology. And she knew it. Because that night, after her suspension, after the internal review was escalated, after she was forced to hand over her laptop, she came to my door. In the rain. No umbrella. Just standing there, soaked, mascara running down her cheeks like ash from a burned-down house. "Dorian," she whispered. "You've made your point. Please stop." But I hadn't made my point yet. Not even close. She stood there like a ghost clinging to her own denial, drenched from the storm, mascara bleeding down her cheeks in jagged little streaks. I hadn't seen her cry since our wedding day. Back then, they were tears of joy. Now, they looked like survival. Not sadness. Not guilt. Just desperation. The panic of a woman watching her kingdom sink beneath the weight of her own lies. I didn't say anything at first. I just stepped aside, wordless, and let her walk into what used to be our living room. Biscuit, sensing tension, stayed curled on the far end of the couch, ears low. He didn't run to her this time. Felicity stood in the center of the room like she didn't remember how furniture worked. "I don't even know who I am anymore," she said finally, her voice barely audible above the tapping of the rain on the windows. "I lied to you. I lied to him. I lied to myself. And now I've lost everything." I let her speak. Let her spill her poison and call it a confession. Let her fold her dignity like laundry at my feet. She said she never meant to hurt me, that it started as escapism, that I was too safe, that she thought she needed chaos to feel alive. She said all the things women like her say when the lights go out and there's no one left to impress. But when she looked at me and whispered, "Can we fix any of this?" I didn't flinch. I just shook my head slowly. "No," I said, "but I can forgive you, because I refuse to carry you with me anymore." She stared at me like I'd slapped her, but I hadn't. I'd finally set her down. That's the part no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't end in screaming matches or scorched earth. It ends in stillness. A quiet moment when you realize they don't own your story anymore. I handed her an envelope. No threats, no drama. Just a finalized copy of the divorce papers and the small key to the storage unit where I'd packed the rest of her things. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She just nodded, turned slowly, and walked out into the rain without another word. And that was it. No cinematic explosion. No public humiliation. Just the dull click of the door closing behind the past. It's been 9 months since that night. Lena and I still talk. Sometimes we laugh about it now, not because it was funny, but because survival is funny in its own backwards way. I got a promotion at work. I started volunteering at a local community kitchen on Thursdays. I finally signed up for guitar lessons after years of telling myself I didn't have the time. And last week, I met someone. Her name's Mira. She's not loud. She doesn't command rooms. She listens when I speak, not just hears me, but actually listens. She asked me what kind of childhood I had on our first date, then let the silence stretch when she saw I needed a moment. I don't know where it's going, and for the first time in a long time, that doesn't scare me. Because here's the truth. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm just finally, fully free.